What's good, YouTube? Warstorm here, coming at you guys with another video. Today I'll be talking about some kind of the cards that made kind of me upset back in the day when they were put on the ban list where they were. But the main thing I want to get to before I get to that is I apologize for not be able to get the intro to Crusadia video up. It had some issues uploading to YouTube. YouTube would just not take the video. I think I figured out what the issue is, so it shouldn't be an issue going forward for you guys. So we'll be able to get more and more. I do want to bring you guys more content, but when YouTube doesn't take it, they don't take it. So there's going to be more videos coming. Next week, I actually plan to kind of give some older decks a fresh coat of paint. I'm actually going to be updating my some older decks like Herald and Dark Magician. And I also found a new locals that I'm going to be going to as well. So so we can have, like, it's a bit more of a casual based locals, which I actually like because it means that you guys can see a little bit more different deck variety. That's one thing I am super excited about is and having more dual related content. It doesn't typically have the most views, but I want to feature more of the content or that kind of content for you guys, and streams to have some more live streams over on the CGC page. But with all that out of the way, we'll go ahead and get to the main topic of the video. So today I'm going to be talking about cards that these were cards that I was we all have those cards that were hit on the ban list that we were almost in disbelief when we pulled it up and saw them on the ban list. And you guys if you guys played during like a Dino Rabbit format, you can imagine how you feel when you saw, Rescue Rabbit, Macro, and Defit Fisher all at one. You can imagine if you were playing in Zectors, seeing Hornet and Dragonfly go to one, etc. We all have those cards that we were almost in disbelief that we were placed on the ban list, but you can always look back and understand, why they were placed on the list and maybe why they're still on the list. And that's kind of what we'll be talking about today. It's kind of doing like a looking back and thinking about cards that I was super upset when they were hit on the ban list, but maybe I've had a change of opinion since, changes. So we'll go ahead and get to the first card now, which is Reinforcement of the Army. So Rhoda is a card that's kind of been flaunting on and off the ban list since its release. Way back in the day, it was a GOAT era card. Rhoda is a very simple spell card. It says add one level 4 lower warrior monster from the deck to your hand. Warrior has always been one of the most supported archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh! This card was, however, after Teller Knights won Worlds back in, don't quote me on the year, it was a couple years ago. This card was put to 1, and it really made me upset at the time because I was playing a lot of Warrior's my favorite archetype. I was playing Battle and Boxers at the time. The limitation of Rhoda really put my deck in a position to where it was not hardly playable anymore. And the thing is, Rhoda was one of those cards, much like something like Reasoning, for example. It was put up to promote Noble Knights, and then once the Noble Knights the box had kind of sold and done its thing, it was placed back to 1. And Konami kind of felt that and I would say nowadays this is where Rhoda kind of belongs. If you look at how many generic warrior monsters we had when this when this card was limited, look at it now. We have things like Armageddon Knight, things like Dark Grepher, but not only that, the entire Goki archetype is warrior type. And when this card was limited, it was a really good card to Necros because you could search Shrew with it. You kind of get the idea. The card it searches so many powerful cards that one is definitely the proper spot for it, and it's definitely gonna understand why it's limited. Can you imagine Gokis with 3 of this card? But I admit it was one of those cards because I personally just did not like Teller Knight's playstyle. I didn't feel like the deck was super fun or fair to play against, and that's one of the reasons why I feel like at the time I was super upset, because Teller Knights got, this kind of a theme of this video, Teller Knights got one of my favorite cards on the list. It was unfortunate, but understandable. Giving all these other decks this extra consistency was probably a bit too much, and it definitely does earn its spot back on the limited list. But I will admit, it still makes me kind of annoyed that the card is limited in the first place. Next card on the list is actually Pendulum Calls. This card has been on and off the ban list. It's currently placed at 3. However, on the same list where Cosmos and Monarchs hit, Pendulum Call was also limited. This was a kind of puzzling to me because in the article some intern probably at Konami posted, the card went to Pendulum Call, ended up going to 1, and their reasoning was really dumb. It literally said Pendulum Call generates too much advantage, but if you read the card, it discards 1 card to add 2. So by placing Pendulum Call on the board, you're using 1 card, but by discarding, you're using 2. So you're using 2 cards to search 2 cards. So you are generating advantage. I don't even think the way I remember at the time saying, leaving the comment, I couldn't understand what they were thinking by saying this, because I don't even think they understand their basic card terms, is something that Farfus left on the comment thread I left in the video. It really didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time, but we all know why this card went to 1 when it did. Autodesk Magicians was a deck that was continually able to hang around the format. It was doing well enough in Nationals, and Metal Foes had just released. Konami wanted Metal Foes to be good. And to an extent, limiting this card actually turned out to be a good thing for me as a player, because I got to play Metal Foes. Metal Foes are one of my favorite decks of all time. So in reality, looking back, this card being limited might have been a good thing, because it allowed me to branch out and play other decks. It's one of the things about Pendulum Call that, and then eventually it was put back to 3. Nowadays, Pendulum Call, while it is a important card in Magicians, it's always kind of had that love-hate relationship, because not only does it also protects your scales as well as searching, which is good in theory, but in practice it means that you can't pop your scales. If you have a Magician in scale, you're not going to be able to pop it for the turn. So all in all, I feel like Konami's reasoning in that article was dumb throughout the article, but the limitation on Pendulum Call is always a card I think I'm going to think about, and just how Konami does their ban list in general. It's always going to be about, pushing whatever the next deck is, more so than, making the game super fair. So next card in the list is actually Lavalval Chain. So you long-time subscribers might remember the video I did on this card saying why it should stay at 3, and then it was banned, and then ceremoniously the next day it was banned. So you guys might remember that, and then there's been memes out there where I posted where it says, you don't need to ban me, we've already chained up the infirmities. You gotta get the idea. So Lavalval Chain, it was kind of just it was a bit of a scapegoat hit, and when it was hit on the the same list that banned Djinn. Lavalval Chain is a very simple rank 4 that allows you to either dump a monster to the graveyard or put a monster on the top of your deck. The fact that you have both effects in one card is pretty nuts, because in Necros, for example, you could stack whatever hand trap on top of your deck, or whatever other card you wanted to search, quote unquote, and then use Valk's effect to tribute this off to search the same monster you searched. And with the way speed was going in Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lavalval Chain was effectively becoming a search card. And it's just two really powerful effects tied into one card. That being said, I do think the reasoning behind banning the card at the time was really dumb. People were talking about, quote, blue-blooded Oni FTK, a highly relevant deck that people didn't even know existed until, people pointed it out. The reasoning behind it being banned was really dumb at the time, and people were just kind of looking. Lavalval Chain was just a scapegoat, as Yugi video said. It pretty much tied Djinn at the hip. But looking at Lavalval Chain now, I can definitely see that it is a really powerful card. It's definitely something that earned its place on the ban list. But at some point, I do feel like it really, at 1 rather than having 3 of it, it really wouldn't be a super powerful card, and it would be good, but again, we have things like Beatrice. While it's a little hard to summon, does create a lot of unfair interactions with, for example, earlier this year there was the Zexal interaction. You kind of get the idea. Anyways, so to summarize, Lavalval Chain is a card I'm always going to have a attachment to, even though I've never owned a copy, but I do think it's a combo creator, but I definitely think it earned its place on the ban list. But at the same time, it would be kind of cool to have it back. Next card in the list is Evil Swarm X Cyton Knights. This is actually one of the first cards. I didn't really buy a lot of product initially when I played, but one of my first purchases was actually a Megaton, and happened to have an Exciton Knight. And the card, I always kind of love this card in terms of what it does. Now, granted, is it the most fair card? No, because it essentially rewards you for, it rewards you for playing badly to an extent. Because if you're unfamiliar with the effect, it basically, during your main phase or battle phase, the opponent has more total cards in their hand in their side of the field than you do. You can detach material and nuke the board. It's also a quick effect. So this thing was pretty damn powerful, but at the time of its ban, it was really, really strange, because we were still in a format filled, unless this was banned, this was on the same list that Construct and all the other Shadal cards and Cleese and all those other decks ended up on the ban list. And it was a really strange hit, because the fact is, most of the decks we were seeing in the format were floaters, and Exciton really was going to have a hard time resolving. To this day, I'm not really sure why it was banned or why it is banned. especially, and you look at it nowadays, like Exiton, I mean, you're using 2 level 4s to try to clear your opponent's board, and granted, it's honestly something I feel like we could use in the game to allow people to go second, especially when things like evenly match exist. If you can bait your opponent and then make this, we need cards like this in the game to kind of punish people for overextending without the proper negation. Things like Amano Iwado and Dinko Seka are great examples as well. And overall, I'm still kind of upset that this card is banned, to be completely honest. But I understand. And to this day, I really don't know why it's banned in the first place. I really do miss Excite Night. It's the card I'm still kind of a little salty about, more than a lot on this list. And the final card, this is last but certainly not least, a lot of you guys will know this. This is Danglong. So, story time. So, Danglong is a card that when I first read it, I knew how absurdly dumb the card was. A generic synchro that can search counter traps and other spells on top of being able to float and send worms to the grave. Freaking nuts. And I spent a good month getting my Yangzing. Yangzings are one of my favorite archetypes ever. Now, granted, the main deck monsters don't do much, but I love the Chinese aspect of like how kind of a lot of the monsters are based around. It's just a really cool archetype to me. It always has been. And the synchro monsters are some of the most powerful synchros we've had in the game. Baxia allows you to spin cards your opponent controls going second, allows you to extend combos. Yazi can tutor things from your deck and can't be targeted. And on top of that, you also have Xiaofeng, which can lock down, appropriate effects. But Danglong kind of took that to a whole nother level. Being generic, unlike, while Xiaofeng and Yazi were generic, Baxia wasn't because of the powerful effects. But Danglong being generic was kind of the nail in the coffin. After I spent that month getting my Yangzing deck ready, Danglong was firmly placed in the ban list and effectively killed any chances I had to build that deck. I have gone back and actually tried to make those decks work, but in the end of the day, Danglong being banned effectively kills off that thing. And I remember saying at the time, I don't feel like he did a lot wrong on his own. It was more just the fact that you look at the things it can do, the fact it's a negation that can float into another negation, and the fact that it can tutor True Kings to the grave was just a little ridiculous. And while I can understand why it's placed in the ban list nowadays, I do think that it's a card I really would like to see come back, but at the same time, it is pretty nutty for what it does. It makes things like DracoNet and DDD engines good. But anyways, it about comes to the end of the video, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Are there any cards that made you super upset when they were banned, but you can kind of look back and say things differently than you would back then? Let me know down in the comment section below. And as always, I thank you guys for watching. So, Orstorm, signing out.